You're listening to Tehachapi with Key Budge, Corey Costello, Greg Garrett, and Ashley Whitmore.
It's Tehachapi time. Key Budge, Corey Costello, Greg Garrett. Guys, how are you?
Doing good, Key.
You know, in our conversations here on Tehachapi, we have gone from wine tasting, we've gone to different community events, and then we've also made sure that we talk regionally with our partners. And today we have a special guest that joins us from NASA, Megan Pearson. Megan, welcome back to Tehachapi.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And I say back because you were with us in our first year back in 2020, during the COVID years.
That's right at the beginning.
Yeah.
When you were the countywide director of communications for the county of Kern. And we were talking to you about, COVID and communicating and how we were doing things. And we did this remotely too. Yeah. We did it via Zoom.
That's right. Back when we couldn't all be in the same room together.
So
this is exciting.
And no one knew how to use Zoom very well either.
Yeah.
So now we're all pros.
Yeah. But since then, since 2020, you've made a career change, a little shift, and you've gone to something that has been very passionate for you. And I know that about you, that this was kind of like a dream destination.
Yes.
Getting to NASA.
It is. So my dad worked for NASA when I was a kid. He actually worked for JPL and worked on the shuttle program. So memories all the way from the time I was 6 were spent out on the dry lake bed out there, sitting there watching shuttles come in on the dry lake bed. And, I didn't realize when I was that little what a big deal it was. But now I get to see all of the work that goes into things like that. And it's even more impressive to be an adult and look back and remember all of that.
Kind of bummed that my kids don't get to experience the shuttle landings like I did, because when I was a kid growing up, we knew people who worked at NASA like everybody does in Tehachapi, and they said, sure, here's some passes for, I can't remember which one we saw land. Might have been Discovery actually, and we got there, crack of dawn, because it was supposed to land at like 7, so we were there at like 4 in the morning, standing along the fence there.
Yeah, with you and 50,000 of your closest friends.
Yeah, and then darn if that thing doesn't come gliding in, just make a big old U-turn and then come back down. It was amazing.
It fell like a rock.
Oh, it was crazy. Yeah. And then we caught one coming back once from Las Vegas, visiting my grandma. All of a sudden we heard the boom. We see, what are these people pull over on the side of the freeway? We're like, oh, the shuttle's coming in. It was a later landing for probably weather, and we pulled over and watched another shuttle land.
And what a distinct...
So cool.
Sonic boom.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like that one had the double boom.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you got the nose. Yeah, you got the front and the back of it. So it's just, that's where the love for the sonic boom comes from.
So before the sonic booms, when I was in 7th grade at Jacobson Junior High, Miss Wells had an aviation class, and we took a field trip to Edwards Air Force Base and watched the shuttle peel off the backside of the 747 when they were doing testing. And Prince Charles at the time. Prince Charles was there too. So we got to hang with Prince Charles and watch.
The actual Prince Charles?
Yes, yeah, he came. He was like 20 or something, and I'm like, I don't know, 13. Yeah, so that was cool. Right off the back of the 740, they were doing testing. And so that was a lot of fun.
And it was fun to watch when they would finally load it up to take it back to Florida.
Go vertical.
You got to see it take off, and you could see it a lot of times fly over Tehachapi. There's this 747 with a space shuttle piggybacked on it, and there it goes.
And they actually took one down to the museum,
California Science Center.
Thank you, at USC.
Yeah,
and so they did a low pass over to Tehachapi about 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
We actually have a video that we just put together. I guess it was last year for the 50th anniversary of that shuttle, where we show all of the footage of it making its flight over California before it's came to its final destination at the California Science Center. Mm-hmm. And they're actually building a new exhibit for it where it will actually be on display vertically.
It's so crazy too how long that that technology worked for. It was very old technology. It worked for a very long time. And now, the development, thanks to a lot of NASA's research and testing, and now the private spaceflight stuff. I mean, they launch into space on an iPad now. You see that, that guy just punched a few buttons on this iPad on his lap, and you see him take off. It's crazy how quickly that technology has evolved.
And those lifting bodies all started out there at NASA right in our backyard, right? I mean,
technology has run amok.
Yes.
I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, no, it's NASA doesn't just do space shuttles, right? It's all about
flight.
NASA stands for National
Aeronautics.
They changed their name though. It used to be NACA.
It used
And
to
now,
be, yes.
Now it's NASA. I'm dating myself again.
I was going to say that's
Wow.
beyond my
Got the
remembrance.
Apollo rocket program over here trying to give us a history.
I'm not that old, but I read a couple books.
Gemini space program.
Space and aeronautics, right?
Yep.
And so you work closely with other government agencies, with the public, and you share the technology.
Absolutely.
Of what's created. It's not just flying. It's in the automobile industry. It's in, of course, the aerospace industry, but it's just through the fabric of the United States.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah,
where
it's amazing to see where all the technology. I notice everybody in this room is wearing glasses, and if you've ever met somebody that's had eye surgery, the mirrors that they use in those machines were actually developed in the most recent version of them are developed from the mirrors that we use for James Webb Telescope. So it's little things like that. There's a little sweeper on one of the rovers. It's like a little string that they use to sweep off the top of it, that it's been used in medical devices for heart surgeries and such. There's hundreds and hundreds of those from all kinds of things, whether it's from our aero work or our space work or science work, all of it. So it's really fascinating to see that stuff where it comes from and goes to.
And so the Armstrong Flight Center is a lot of that research, that technology. NASA's got different branches, so to speak, but this is kind of the testing technology branch, correct?
Yes. So we are the agency that focuses on high risk flight research. So if it flies fast, high, or differently, it's probably been developed or tested out there.
Okay.
We also have a lot of experience in systems development and fundamental research. And I learned recently that fundamental research doesn't just mean important early research. It actually means like the fundamental components, the component research associated with building aircraft parts, whatever the systems may be. So
the ingredients,
yeah, all the ingredients. It's really fascinating. And we've got capabilities for days that you tell me what you want to talk about. And we'll dive in. I'll go wherever you want to go.
The United States Air Force, they host you, right? You're a guest.
We're a tenant.
You're a tenant on the base, and you have lots of programs going on concurrently, but X-59.
Yes.
So that's to quiet the sonic boom noise, right? If you're from around here, boom, boom, right? You hear that. That's breaking the sound barrier. But if you could quiet that noise, then maybe you could fly supersonic over the United States so you can get from here to there faster without causing, people's harm to people, I suppose. So tell us about that program.
Yeah. So right now there's not necessarily a speed limit in the sky, but there is a sound limit. And so our goal is to help remove the sound limit. So if you could fly Mach 2 and not make the noise, then more power to you. But the challenge is that boom, and it's not necessarily that it's dangerous. It's that it's annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody enjoys it like we do out here. We really, a lot of people on base enjoy that boom.
It's the sound of freedom.
Yes, that's what we always hear. It's the sound of freedom. And so if we can find a way to remove that, it helps open up supersonic travel over land, which now you can't do. It's only done over the ocean, where it doesn't disturb people. It doesn't break windows. It doesn't disrupt cattle or livestock and so forth. So the X-59 program is an aircraft that is built in such a way that, I'm going to simplify this, and the engineers are going to cringe. But when an aircraft, and unfortunately your listeners can't see my hands, but when an aircraft breaks the sound barrier, it creates a shock wave that comes off of it, and it's shaped like an N. The X-59 is actually the way the aircraft is built is changing the shape of the shock wave that comes off of there, so that as the shock wave gets closer to the ground and they stack up on each other, it's not as powerful. It doesn't make that big snap that we're used to. So it's actually changing the shape of the wave because of the shape of the aircraft. So the anticipated result is that the sound of the thump that will come off of the X-59 would be like if we were all standing outside talking and somebody down just a couple of car spaces down slams their car door. It should be about that loud, which is, you hear that all the time, right? If somebody's parked just outside your office and so they slam the car door, that's, it's not very disruptive. And so
So
that's
you
what
need
we're
to create
aiming.
that technology without creating a system that's too expensive to build or maybe causes too much drag, or it sounds like you just need a black hole, right? Suck that noise right in. Just carry a
That's
black
it.
hole right
Yep.
wherever you go.
Yeah.
Crazy part about that aircraft and seeing some previous presentations about it was talking about the pilot, and there's no windshield, right?
Yes.
They're basically, go back to my point about an iPad, right? There's this camera mounted in the front, and they're seeing an image in front of them. That's what the pilot will see, is the broadcast image from that camera, instead of traditionally, if you're flying a jet now, you've got your cockpit and you've got windshield and you can look around. So I thought it was fascinating to have no traditional cockpit in terms of
Well,
no
my
windshield.
car now, when I put it in drive, it has this screen and it shows me via camera until I hit 5 miles an hour. What's in front of me? I'm like, well, that's a little bit distracting because I could look through the windshield, but it's showing me what's in front of me.
Or when you back up, it shows you.
Yeah, which is a
And
good
so
safety thing. Yeah.
I'm guilty now of always looking mostly when I back up, it's, you check your mirrors, but it's right to that screen to see what's going on. And I'm reacting to the screen and the cameras in the back of the vehicle, not so much my rear view mirrors and, the side mirrors and that sort of thing.
And the neat thing about this program too, Megan, is that you're doing it on a strict budget because the airplane is kludged together.
Yes.
F-16s and other component landing gear here, this and that, and you've kludged something together so that you can
it's many
test the
parts.
technology, and then if it's worthwhile, then you can take that next step.
Yeah, then we can give the technology over. We are only building one, so it's not like there are, if you're familiar with other X-planes, we've built multiples to test other things. There is only one plan for this, and then we can give the technology to various airline industries or, whatever aircraft manufacturers are interested in the technology and the design, we can give that over to them. The bigger win from that is the data that we give over to the FAA, though, because we can give the data on, when we fly over communities, the tolerance level for it. So we can have community members gauge what their tolerance of the sound was, and then we can give that to the FAA, and perhaps they can change the sound limit in the sky and let people fly a bit faster. But back on it's called the external vision system, and it's like you're saying, right? We look at the backup camera, we look at the camera in the front of the car, and we're getting really used to that. So if you ask the pilots, that's their question that they get a lot is, does that freak you out not to have a windshield? They're like, no, it's just kind of normal. They're not bothered by it. It is a camera on the top, and then there's also one on the bottom. So it's kind of a compiled
That's
image.
right. And it puts the two images together. Yeah.
But it's just like a drone. I mean, when you're flying a drone, you could be in the States somewhere and, have a mission over the Middle East, and it's the same thing.
Yeah, you're just looking at
5,000 miles away.
Yeah, it's the compiled image. So they're very comfortable with it, which makes me feel better because I like the idea of them being very comfortable in their aircraft. It is a little unusual to see, though, that there is no there's
window.
no windshield.
There's no window. Yeah.
They can see out the sides, though.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
How fast at Mach 2, how quick do you fly from LA to New York? I don't know. I'm curious, right? I mean, imagine that, the future of the airline industry, like you make it to New York in an hour or two.
Mach is like 650, depending on your altitude.
It depends on the altitude and the weather and all of that. And it's right around 700-ish miles an hour, depending on a bunch of conditions. So Mach 2, you double the speed.
1,400
So you're looking at about a little over
hours.
2 hours. And right now the flight's about 4. You'd cut that time in half.
And there's a lot of private companies that are
crazy.
pursuing this technology. I know there's a company that designed and built an airplane, Boom, I think is the name.
Boom Supersonic.
Out of Colorado, and they moved their airplane to Mojave Airport, and they're going to start flight testing that. But if you can save time and you save money, that's a win for everybody.
Yeah, and it will probably be a minute before it's something that the entire American population can afford, because when the technology comes out and say it's one of the big airliners decides that they're going to start offering dinner flights to Paris. Those are going to be a little expensive to start, but the hope is that, as we get better and we're developing more sustainable aircraft, that's another thing that we're spending a lot of time and energy on, is, that we can start to bring those pieces into future aircraft too.
Because the private industry can't afford supersonic, the British Airways and Air France,
Concorde,
they had
yeah.
the Concorde, but those are owned, but wholly owned subsidiaries, or at the time, I believe, the French and the British government. So they were backing those, subsidizing those programs, and the tickets were outrageous. And you know how that project all ended up, unfortunately. But so the skies are getting safer because of NASA, and we're going to go faster and be
we're
more
hoping,
efficient.
Yeah, we're really focusing on the efficiency piece right now, which is fun. We just unveiled recently the Sustainable Flight Demonstrator, which, actually, what we unveiled was an old MD-90, a Boeing MD-90 that Boeing is going to cut up and move the pieces around. And they're taking what's called a truss brace transonic wing. Say that 10 times fast. And so you're used to a tube and wing design, right? That's what we call a traditional aircraft, the airliner. So it's just a tube and a wing that comes out the side. So they've designed a wing that is thinner, and it has a truss that comes down, and then they've moved the engines as well.
Oh,
and
I've seen that.
Yeah, so it's really kind of a weird look. It's not what we're used to. The projection is that it will make the aircraft 30% more efficient. And so if we can make the aircraft 30% more efficient, then your airline ticket should be 30% cheaper.
30% is a giant number.
Huge.
That much
1 or
fuel?
2% is a win, but 30% is out of this world.
Huge. Yeah. So it will take several years to build that. I think, we're a few years from seeing that actually go through any sort of flight readiness review, but they're going to start chopping it up here soon in the next year or so and moving all the pieces around and rebuilding it. And that's happening at the Boeing facility down in Palmdale.
It cracks me up with flight testing. I mean, people usually think like, oh, someone's got this crazy idea and they sit down and they draw it out and then they start building it. But more and more I learn about it. There's so much more of this like, hey, we have these old parts over here from this plane and it worked okay, but you think we could, or like if you think about what they're doing with Stratolaunch, you know what, let's get two 747, let's just weld them together and see what, it's amazing. And we deal with companies even here in Tehachapi that do these projects and they get, oh, here's some F-16 engines, if you can make these work. And it's crazy how much reuse and testing is done on old technology to make it more efficient or a whole new product.
Yeah, it's a lot more cost effective, especially when you're a federal agency and you're taxpayer funded, right? We all civil servants all get that. So to use what you already have or to use what's already available rather than designing and building from scratch, if we can use an F-18 engine and put it into the X-59 or use the MD-90, because they were laying around in a boneyard and cut them apart and put them back together, it's a whole lot more cost effective and better for the taxpayer.
Yeah, and then if the technology proves itself, then you can start refining. Okay, let's design it from the ground up.
Yeah.
To optimize that.
And then you also have, depending on how long the wing is, how do you accommodate for a really long, thin wing at an airport? Right. If you think about all the jet bridges that come out, they're designed for a particular wing design. And if we start completely changing the look and feel and wing of an aircraft, what does that then do to
it's like highways and bridges, they're not high enough, they're not wide enough, or trains. You can't put a high-speed rail on the Union Pacific track, so it's the technology.
And it's finding that balance so that we don't leave airports in a position that they have to completely rebuild their terminals, that we design wings that fold, they're thin and long, but they can fold and then go into an existing jet bridge.
Airbus did that with the A380 and see how well that worked out for everybody.
Yeah, well.
They're not building anymore.
I just want y'all to design an airplane that'll be on time.
It's going to be so big.
So it's really funny you would say that.
No more sitting on the tarmac for 6 hours.
Can you just design one that's going to be punctual?
We actually, it's so funny. We did a bunch of studies on aircraft, when it pulls out and how much time it sits on the ramp.
Why did they pull out? I mean, American Airlines just got fined like millions of dollars because they pushed the airplane out and sat there in the rain for 6 hours.
Yeah.
Why push back?
That I don't know. I do know that
that's some technology you guys need to work on.
We'll get right. We'll add that
called?
to the list.
I think it's called common sense.
Yes.
Right. So maybe
Agreed.
you just have it or you don't.
Agreed. But we did do a bunch of studies on how much fuel you burn sitting there and how much more effective and how much less fuel you would use if you timed it all better and you had a better system. So unfortunately, this one didn't happen at Armstrong, but NASA did, a couple of our aero research centers worked on this, and we used some of the big airports and the big problem airports like Atlanta and Dallas. And they came up with a system that got planes in and out faster and more regularly. So hopefully that starts to roll out and we all, get on our merry way faster without spending quite as much time out there waiting.
Yeah, for sure.
In the heat as the
Right.
the AC on the plane isn't quite working the way it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about drones a minute ago. Tell us about, or what you can, maybe what's happening in the drone world out at Armstrong.
Yeah, so we're spending a lot of time on advanced air mobility. That's kind of the phrase for big drones, right? People tend to think of drones as the little ones that you can buy at Best Buy, and that's an accurate statement. Air taxis are the big things, when you think about the future of advanced air mobility and the possibility of going down, to the corner over here in Tehachapi and catching like an Uber air taxi instead of an Uber car on the road. We're looking at how you incorporate all of these vehicles into the airspace, and there's been a lot of work on that. It takes a lot because you've got existing manned aircraft or piloted aircraft. Sorry, that's the correct term. So you've got piloted aircraft that are going back and forth in the airspace as they're used to, and they've figured out how they work with high altitude aircraft. And now you're going to introduce all these small aircraft that are remotely piloted or eventually not piloted. They're autonomous. That's where the industry will get to and at some point. And so NASA is helping to figure out what are the regulations that you need to have in place to make that as safe as the highway system is today. And what is the highway system in the sky? So where do these air taxis fly? Do they fly over existing roads? Can they fly over the top of your house? So understanding that is one component of it. And then all of the pieces that come with an autonomous or remotely piloted vehicle, like how do you make sure it doesn't run into a building? We just completed a wind study with one of our own drones there at Armstrong, where you're trying to account for when it lands on the top of a building, how does it account for the wind? What does it do with the wind that's on top of a building that you may not experience down on the ground because of all the buildings shielding it? There's so much work going into advanced air mobility and how we get there, and noise studies, how loud are the propellers? I don't know about you, but we had a kid in our neighborhood that had one of those little drones right when they first came out, and every kid, yes,
yeah,
right? And how many of those things got shot out of the sky? You'd hear on the news about somebody, all up in arms about somebody in their neighborhood flying one of those too close to their house. And so we're trying to figure out those things. We're helping the industry. We're lending our expertise, with folks like Joby and Whisk and all the others that are working in this space. We're lending our expertise in the aeronautic space to help them figure out how do you make it quiet? How do you incorporate it? What are the ground rules, so to speak, of incorporating all of these aircraft into the same airspace? And it is not an easy task.
But you think about the efficiency. If I want to go to, pick a town that's a suburb of, a bigger city. So I have to drive to LAX, get on a plane, and then fly to Chicago, and then get a car and drive to wherever, that suburb of Chicago. If I could do a
Joliet, Illinois.
Yeah, if I could do a point to point, from Tehachapi to there, that's going to cause less congestion at the airport, on the freeways, be more efficient, It's probably a bad example because that's a long way.
That's
from
actually
here.
a perfect example.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
But because I was thinking actually in my head, the electric powered. So
Yeah.
Which you're doing a lot of testing for that.
right.
Too.
And,
Yeah.
But there's so much work to do because our grid can't hardly handle what's up now. People have these electric cars, like charging stations. You go to Vegas and the Tesla line is, 3 miles long. People waiting to get charged. So there's so much work to do on the backside, but also the front side with you guys, the technology. So hopefully we're all working in the same direction and we get to the same point, the correct point at the right time.
Yeah, it is a great case for that. Like you said, that Tehachapi to LAX, it's really good. It gets all the congestion off the freeways, right? And it's an aircraft. So is it possible then that what you do is you buy a ticket from pick an airline. I don't want to pick one because then it's going to be like a NASA endorsement. So like,
We'll use one that it doesn't exist anymore. TWA.
there we go. So you buy a ticket from TWA. God, watch them come back. So you buy a ticket from them, and you buy a ticket from Tehachapi to Joliet, Illinois. Now you might board 2 different aircraft because one of them is an air taxi and one of them is or 2 of them are air taxis, right? Because you fly from LAX to, but it's all one seamless transaction for you. You walked out your door, you found a vertiport or, you know, a port of some kind here in Tehachapi, and you just went on your merry way.
Yep.
Right? You got where you needed to go, and now it's a really seamless transaction. And wouldn't that be a fantastic opportunity? So looking at all of that all the way down the road, as in addition to all of the safety measures, and we talked about AI earlier, but how do you get the AI into the aircraft? And so we're doing some work now where we're studying how a pilot would interact with the system. So you put the pilot in the system to see what they would do, to see if it matches up with what the autonomous systems would do. So a ton of work we could probably spend a month on that alone.
As I hear this, I just start thinking about movies, you know, and things, you know, or cartoons like the Jetsons. Yeah. And it's amazing, you know, to think about what 20 or 30 years ago or 40 or 50 years ago was, you know, this advanced dream. And here things are becoming a reality.
Yeah.
And we're testing and we're going through how do we fine tune this? You know, I was thinking, okay, air taxi, you got your TWA ticket and you get here, it's a Tehachapi Municipal Airport, you board there and you're flying across the 405 overpass and there's probably 200 other air taxis heading to LAX or more. You know, it's like, now do we have air congestion? You know, getting into, you know, like an LAX, you've cut it down where the freeway access, the ground travel is now 50%. Now more of it's above, you know, I can't even imagine looking up. One helicopter flies over. It's like, is that CHP or is that a news copter?
But can you imagine how much more efficient it would be if not only in the air, but on the ground? Because the driver that has the rubber neck, right? There's a fender bender on the other side of the freeway. And you're like, for goodness sakes, if somebody could just create I know the technology already exists, but it's just introducing it. But, you know, you just keep a 40-foot distance, whatever, at 50 miles an hour. And, you know, you can't be an idiot on the road. And I think in the air, we have a greater ability to manage that, because the safety factor is exponentially higher, right? It's safer to fly than it is to drive, be in an airplane or drive a car, but I think we'll continue to retain that. But if you can dream it, Key, NASA can figure it out. I'm serious.
Dreaming.
No, I mean that in all seriousness, because we dream big, and then we design it with the engineers and the technicians and everybody front office, back office. They make it happen, right? Dream it and we'll figure it out.
You brought up movies. All I'm thinking about is the only one that keeps coming to my head is, you know, Dr. Emmett Brown, right? Where we're going, we don't need roads. That's what I'm kind of thinking, you know, like if y'all need an unofficial slogan, it should be.
Where we're going, we don't need.
And then we don't need to fill
roads.
Potholes anymore.
Yeah,
For
exactly.
goodness sakes, get on with it, man. Come on.
We'll get on that. We will definitely.
We're going to save taxpayer dollars.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's what we're aiming for, anyways. But
and so you talked a lot about in the past. We were getting ready to go on air here, but we were talking about and you brought it up briefly. Technology development. So you do a lot of this stuff, a lot of this testing and this tech. I mean, some of it does have a commercial application on a large scale, like maybe the X-59, but there's other things that are being tested that you then effectively pass on or hand off to American business.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a big, really, really important thing to NASA that the public understands. We are taxpayer funded, and so it's incredibly important that the research that we do and the technology that we develop goes back to the American people, that it's accessible to them, and it keeps the American industries at the forefront of whatever their industry is, right? So that America remains as competitive as possible. So a couple of really fun examples. There's a cup out there, and I can't tell you what it's called, but it's it's like one of the, the coffee cups that you drink out of.
Insulated tumbler, one of those?
Yes, it's
There
an
you go.
insulated tumbler, and it keeps your coffee at the perfect temperature. And it's a NASA spinoff, right? It's from NASA technology that we used in our spacesuits. The piece that we were talking about before we came on was the mirrors that are in the James Webb telescope, are in the optical surgery equipment that your doctors are using to, make their surgery safer and better, and to be able to see what they're doing inside your eyeball while they're carving around in there. And then there's like crazy things like pajamas, right?
Memory foam. I just
foam.
did a little Wikipedia.
Yeah, and
memory foam.
Yeah, there's some memory foam and some really interesting things. So it's all of these tiny little advancements that we share with American industry, and some of our partners out at Mojave that are building things out there have taken that technology, and so you see that come back into the region. You see it come back into the state and into the country, and it's fantastic. The piece that's a little hard to grasp is how do you know what technology's out there? And so I always suggest that our folks call NASA Armstrong, and we'll connect you with our technology transfer team, because they have all of that information. We also partner with universities and colleges to share that information with them. So as you have like industrial automation units and engineering schools and teams that are trying to build something, our tech transfer university folks can partner with them to show them like, hey, here's something that we developed it. It's maybe not ready for industry. It's not far enough advanced. We tested it and we got it where we needed it, but for industry to pick it up, it needs a little bit further development. And we can partner with the university, who will then take it the rest of the way across the line and develop it and get a really good project out of it.
Sometimes you don't even know what you have, in front of you.
Right.
Like, oh, what could I do with this? I'm not sure. And then you get in a couple other people, and all of a sudden somebody comes up with an idea, and like, wow, never thought of that.
Yeah.
What a great idea. It's like,
Absolutely.
Who created pickleball, right? It was ping pong, tennis. Oh, let's do pickleball, right?
That's a good sport too. That'll give you a good workout.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
So another one too that was so weird was laser racing swimming swimsuits, which were so good that they were banned. They're like, you guys are too fast. This is not. So everybody's wearing the bodysuit, and I'm just like, that was a NASA.
well, it
tech.
actually moves when it's just sitting there by itself.
Yeah.
It's so fast.
It just gives you a little bit
But
of
no,
a
the
competitive.
technology, for sure.
crazy.
Yeah.
It's a
And
great
it's-
example. I knew that one.
It's really important to us that American companies understand that technology is available to them. That we also have our technology database. So all of the reports that our researchers, our scientists, our engineers, when they're done with the project, they write a report up and they publish it, and that's available for people to search, and that you can find that library online.
Does NASA patent all of or do you leave that to the private industry? I guess the government can't, or maybe it can.
Yeah, so
I'm not sure.
It's a little bit different. There are some that are patented, but not all of them. It depends. It's a case by case situation with each technology. We own it, but that's technically owned by the American people because they paid for it. So that's why we give it back to them. And then whatever the industry does, the business does with it, then they patent and own that piece. So like, for instance, every single one of us has a cell phone, right, with a camera in it. The camera in every phone, whether you're an Android or an iPhone, is a NASA technology. We've never released that. Like, iPhone doesn't own that technology to get that camera that small. That's a NASA
I
technology.
always wondered, how the heck do you make such a small camera?
Yeah, that's NASA for you.
Honestly.
Yeah. So that's our technology. But for instance, we were talking about batteries when we were talking about the drones and things. We did all of that work on what's called X-57 and electrified flight. There was a company that took the batteries that were off the shelf and kind of did some work on them, and they are now selling that battery to whoever needs it as a result of the work that they did with NASA. And so we launched a whole new company because of the work there. So it's really important that people know that
NASA
technology.
invented the Bowflex
The both?
Yeah, that's for astronauts.
for astronauts because they can't take weights into space, right? Because it's heavy.
right.
So they figured out elastic resistance training, and then it became the Bowflex.
And I have to say it.
Crazy.
Tang.
Nope.
Tang.
Did
Tang?
not invent
No,
Tang.
is that
It's one of those.
a myth.
It's
Really?
a myth. Yeah.
Oh.
You got to get on the Wikipedia. I'm telling you, it's got all.
Well, see,
these,
I'm doing it by my brain power. You're just
cheating.
you're cheating.
I'm using the technology that NASA created to look up information
right.
about them.
So
here's-
Tang, they were doing their marketing, so they were a fraud back in the 70s. Didn't they talk
It
about
was
astronauts?
used by NASA by astronauts, but not invented by astronauts.
Oh.
It was their drink of choice.
Well, the astronauts
idea.
don't usually invent it.
Yeah, water
But, yeah,
purification.
sometimes they will.
Yeah,
That's
here's
another thing.
one that was actually developed out at
Ion
NASA
exchange.
and is really fun. So, being where we're situated, you guys see the semis that are coming down the road all the time. And you know that funny kind of cone that's on the top of them?
Oh yeah.
And the weird little panels that are
Come out the
underneath
back.
them?
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, that,
Aerodynamics.
yeah, that was actually developed at NASA Armstrong years and years ago, the truck fairings, and to make them more aerodynamic.
More fuel
and
efficient.
we were recently, in the last year, trying to figure out what the economic impact of that was. And it's huge. We can't
sure you
really
could measure it.
Yeah, it's like you'd have to figure out how many trucks are on the road annually and how many miles they drive and, you know, the percentage of gain there. But it's a big number. It's
I
a
think
big
Jay
impact.
could figure that out.
Leave it to an engineer.
Yeah,
Potentially.
because we're always counting the trucks on 58 and, you know,
Oh,
the
that's true.
issues with the climbing lanes and stop me now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many people work at Armstrong Flight Center?
So we're about 1,400.
Okay.
It's a mix of civil servants and contractors. So it's not quite perfectly 50-50, but pretty close.
Okay.
Yeah.
And visitor center. Do you have a visitor center that people can come in and learn more about NASA and buy a trinket and take their kids and educate them and, you know, the whole experience?
So because the base is closed, it's very hard to get you to our visitor center. It is now open. It was closed all during COVID, and we just started kind of updating all of the content because over 3 years everything changed, and so that's all going through a refresh now. And the gift center is back open, so it's open. It's just that you can't drive off the highway and get to it because the guards at the base
So you
will
need to
stop
make
you.
arrangements. So would you go to your website maybe and pick a date?
So
and
we
time
don't
and-
do public tours anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, but there are times where we can arrange, you know, depending on the scenario, we can arrange for that.
like a school district if they wanted to bring a busload of kids over for
Yeah,
a
we can.
tour.
We coordinate with our STEM team.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the staffing is just not there to do as many tours as we used to.
Right.
They used to have a whole system, you know, with a bus and all sorts of things that we'd take people around, and we just don't have that capability anymore. But it is really important to get people out there so that they can see the work we're doing, because until you see it, it's kind of hard to appreciate.
Well, I
but
know the
it is there.
the base commander, one of his big public outreach. That's really important for the public to understand what's happening behind the gates.
Yeah.
Right. Not completely. Right. You have things that you're working on, but to understand the amount of people that work there, the technology that's being created, so that the public can continue to support the military or NASA or all these different projects, because they are important.
Yeah, it's absolutely important that the public has the ability. And that's the beauty in working for NASA, is most of what we're doing is not secret, despite what people think. Every time somebody hears that you work for NASA, they're like, oh my gosh, do you work on secret stuff? No, not really. I mean, there's not really anything secret we're doing. We share all of our information, but it is critical that the public gets a chance to see it and interact with it and understand it, because we're doing it for them. And they're paying for it. So we really need to get it back into their hands in a way they can understand it. Not in engineer speak, not in scientist speak, but in a way that makes sense to them.
Let's talk about a little bit about the STEM aspect, because we have a very strong STEM footprint here, and we talk to different organizations, and we've got some kids that aspire, like yourself, as you were a little girl looking, going,
Yep.
And I know we've got these kids here, our little boys, little girls that are aspiring to do big things, and the STEM program's a part of it, and that's something that NASA really supports.
Yeah, we have a whole office of STEM engagement, and they focus on curriculum. So they take, what NASA's doing, and they develop it in a curriculum, and then they work with the schools and the school districts to help implement that. And so if you have a class and you NASA can actually give you materials to help teach your science topics or your mathematic topics. And we have, like I said, we have a whole office of STEM engagement that covers all of that. And it is really important because we call them the Artemis generation. So the kids now are Artemis generation. We're all the shuttle
I was just thinking that, like, that's how we all got pumped up about NASA was because the shuttle.
Yeah.
So what gets the kids excited these days?
Yeah. So we call them the Artemis generation because it's going to be the next Artemis flights, because we are going back to the moon here soon. And so we want to use that opportunity to get kids engaged again. The other thing that I would say that's really important for kids to hear is that if you are not a science, engineering, and math focused student, there is still a place for you at places like NASA. I am not an engineer or a mathematician. I would make you cringe if you saw the way I do math. But there are places for people like me at NASA, right? There's all kinds of jobs for people in supporting roles. And it's really, I've never worked anywhere where you see that every single person at the agency understands that they're a part of the bigger picture. We talk about that from a cultural leadership standpoint, that's what you want. You want everybody in your organization to understand they're part of the big mission, but you really see that at NASA. And so it's a great place, regardless of STEM or whether you're a literature historian, a librarian, right? Everybody fits in.
I find it fascinating. I remember when NASA and Edwards were having the STEM programs for the kids, and I want to say it was during COVID.
Oh, at the air show.
Yes. And they had the entire STEM curriculum. And then I found out that it's available, to teachers, that they can reach out, and just like the technology that you talked about that's free to American business, the education is also free to our education system. And there was just so many kids participated. And I remember, I think when we talked to General Heiger, he had kind of hinted towards that as well. And it was just very neat to see that give back. And it's the things that we don't hear about because we get focused on other things, big picture.
Yeah.
But these are the things that you talk about that are available to the American people. It's the American dollar that pays for it.
Yep.
But you turn it around to make it available even to the youngest Americans.
Well,
Yeah.
if you can get interest in a child, right? Remember, so we had the stargazing events out at the airport, and NASA brought out, what's the 747 that has
NOAA?
the telescope?
Oh, that was Sophia.
Sophia. So
Yeah.
obviously the 747 didn't come here to Tehachapi, but that group came to Tehachapi and participated in the stargazing event. So we had lots of private telescopes, but Sophia group was here and they were showcasing all the telescope, different things. And, the young men and women, their eyes were just like, wow. And you're trying to spark something, right? Because everybody has their own journey that they're going to take in
Absolutely.
life.
Yeah.
And if you can, grab them and get them interested in something, that's a win.
My 6-year-old wants to be a storm chaser. Do you have anything to help him out?
So we do. We actually have a whole airborne science team.
There you go.
We have an ER2. Are you familiar with the U2?
Oh, the U-2 airplane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, not the band.
Yeah. So I found what I'm looking for, but go ahead.
Yeah. So we have an ER2, which is like a U2. It's just
Okay.
the civilian model of a U2. Doesn't have any of the spy equipment.
So she says.
That's that secret
That's
stuff.
what I have to say every time someone sees it flying. It doesn't have any spy equipment. So we actually use that. We just did a really cool mission down in Florida, I believe, where we flew over the top of thunderstorms because they're trying to figure out when a thunderstorm passes over a metropolitan area, the thunderstorm ejects emissions up into the air.
Lightning. And we just figured that out not so many years ago.
Yeah,
Lightning
so-
is actually going into space and nobody even knew that.
Yeah, so it sends all sorts of things out into the atmosphere, and so they were trying to study that. So some individual gets to fly the ER2 over the thunderstorm, right? And they pick particular parts of the country where they're getting lots of those.
Yeah.
So obviously this time of year, Florida's fantastic for that. And then parts of the Midwest are great for that too. And then some really gutsy pilot gets to fly another aircraft right through the middle of it. And those guys are over at Langley, but they fly through the storm. And what we do is we send data between the ER2 in the other aircraft so that they can figure out what's happening in the middle. Right. So yes, we have a place for storm chasers.
I think if you could harness that energy, then we wouldn't have to do, all this stuff on the ground, right? You just grab a lightning bolt.
I strongly don't recommend that.
If I could dream it, you could do it.
That's right.
Somebody will come up with the idea, I'm sure.
I'm sure somebody has.
Somebody is sitting there with a piece of paper trying to figure out how you capture the lightning bolt.
Yeah.
What are some of the needs that maybe our NASA facility needs? Is that, I know we talked to different, when we talked to Strata Launch, and they're looking for engineers, and they're looking for different and support roles. Does NASA have that need as well?
Yeah, we actually there's kind of a group that's coalescing, and I think the city has been a part of that, the B3K initiative that's looking at, how it's a really interesting place to recruit for. Edwards Air Force Base is very isolated. And so when you're looking at all your opportunities as an engineer, an aerospace major, or whatever your area of expertise is, do you go to the middle of the desert or do you go somewhere else that's not quite so isolated? So we find that people who are from here do better. And so it's, kind of building that educational opportunity up amongst the local colleges and universities so that we're creating that pipeline. We're having those conversations and making sure that we're, a part of that we're helping. It's identifying, technicians, mechanics, engineers. It's all of the, the technical needs too. So just like Mojave, all of like the Strata Launch and the Astrobotics and Northrop Grumman and all of the folks on the other side of the hill, they're essentially stealing each other's employees because there's only so many to go around, and generally they follow the work. So it's all about having the coolest work and having the coolest minds coming up with the next thing to do.
But again, it's homegrown because people get Kern County, and if you grow up here and you have the opportunity to have a fantastic career, there's opportunities. And once again, here is another organization that provides opportunity. So
I'm glad you brought that up, Key. I was just thinking about the quality of life too, and no disrespect to any of our neighbors because we love them and we support each and every one of them. But the city of Tehachapi's role in so many ways, we hear this over and over and over, and we live by this, and that is quality of life, right? We offer a nice city. We offer housing that's affordable. We offer events, because if you're going to go to work and mom or dad stays home with the kids, you want something to do. You want a good education here in Tehachapi for your children. You want, recreation. You want health care. All of those elements matter. And we've been taking that very, very serious for several years now, and it's paying off. So all of the employees that work for you, with you, they have a choice, right?
Exactly.
They can live here, they can visit here, or they can live and visit anywhere else, but we're just another choice, and we're happy to be part of that. Yeah,
it's giving them that sense of community, right? And I think that's what Tehachapi offers. It's you talk to the folks on base who live out there, and they have a very tight community. Those that can't, because it's very limited housing. I mean, I wouldn't speak for the Air Force, but I would be willing to bet they would tell you that they need more housing on base.
Oh, yeah. And
they tell us that all the time.
Yeah, and they said they don't really build houses anymore. It's just not cost effective for the federal government to build it.
Yeah, so having places that our employees, whether they're Air Force employees or NASA employees, can live and the commute is reasonable. And they have that sense of community. They have, places to go eat. They have places to hang out with their kids. It's like the Mountain Fest, right? We were there right up until
briefly
until the rain took it all away. But it's important to us to be a part of those things so that your community, because your community is our community, right? We're sharing the same bank of people, and just making sure that they have multiple options to what you're saying. A lot of our folks commute from LA County. They come from the other side of the hill. So like you said, just giving them another option, place to go.
And we have a great general aviation airport. A lot of these technicians and engineers, they like to tinker, right?
Yes,
so when they leave work, they don't just leave it there. They like to go home or go to the airport and tinker on their own airplanes, experimental airplanes and different things. So we pride ourselves in being part of a positive solution to helping NASA.
Yeah, some of the most fun photos you'll ever see is walking around the NASA Center and asking people what they were working on in their free time. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty amazing. I've had people show me full-blown furniture remodels and Sprinter van conversions that are like, professionally done. I'm like, holy cow, where did you find the time to do that? But they're very much tinkerers, and they appreciate that space. So, but we want to be a part of the community. So, I mean, that's all we're looking for, is the opportunity to be a part of it and be a part of the solution and sharing what we have.
Yeah, I know there's a history of that. That's part of, the fabric of NASA. I remember living and working in the Antelope Valley with the Sheriff's Department, and when we would have special events, NASA would come out and we would have these different static displays and just drawing excitement and energy and getting to see the stuff that was going on at the airport and out there at the Skunk Works and seeing some of these things, getting to see the space shuttle there, and just they want the community to relate. Yeah. And I think that's pretty cool.
It is.
Now, is there anything else going on that we haven't talked about? I mean, there's a million. I mean, I know that's gosh, we open that up to everything. But is there anything that maybe that NASA would say, hey, I know we talked about sharing the technology and making that available to businesses, but you also mentioned before we started recording that is someone in college that took advantage of that.
Yes. So a friend of mine, her son is working on a project for his PhD, and is developing. I don't want to steal his thunder, so I don't want to let the cat out of the bag. But he's developing a small robotic technology, and it was something that I actually read something a couple of weeks after he mentioned it to me, and was like, oh hey, that's what he was talking about, and we've done that. So here, let me send you the link to the technical report where we built what you're trying to build. You can just go get it, right? You can go get the specifications. So yeah, that comes back to that technical database that's out there. It's just people don't know it's there, and that they can search it. You can go in and put whatever you want in there, and I'll make sure I get you a link to share with your listeners. But there's so much work happening. It's hard to kind of figure out what else to talk about. I mean, I could tell you all about our capabilities and things we're doing that are wild.
Well, I think some of the most amazing images that you see come from NASA. No matter what it is, it's on the website, with social media, the imagery is so incredibly sharp. Now, here's a true story.
They do have advantages with the lenses.
Well, here, so when I was an investigator with LA County Sheriff, we were working a case that NASA was tied to it. There was some, I won't get into it, but anyway, I had opportunity to work with some NASA people behind the scene, and they were able to provide technology to us to enhance things that we didn't have. And this is the County of Los Angeles, pretty big organization. We did not have access to some of the technology, and they were able to go through, filter, and sharpen images that we were able to identify suspects based on technology that NASA had in its possession. Wasn't available to the public at that time, but they were able to based on the case that I was working. And it was just pretty cool to be able to work with an organization like that. And I was like, oh, you need that key? Absolutely no problem. We'll have it for you tomorrow. And it was like, wow. And we were able to solve, a pretty substantial case. But it's just kind of neat, the working together, the collaborations, and it makes me go back and think about my career in another whole nother field. And how they tie together.
Our folks are very eager to share. It's really heartwarming when you get the engineers and the scientists and they light up. Now, half the time I don't understand what they're saying because they're using words that I just don't even know what they mean. But when I can get them to slow down long enough, and they love to share what they're doing, whether it's the technology or the science or just the knowledge, they live for that and they light up. I always feel bad when I'm like, okay, I got to bring some folks around for a tour. I'm going to interrupt your day for a little bit. And they are thrilled because they finally get to show somebody this thing that they're working on. Maybe it's a model of a wing that they're thinking about building, or these crazy string sensors that can measure the strain on, the structural integrity of a piece of metal on a wing, or, the temperature inside something, or the volume of water that's in it. And they're so excited about this revolutionary thing because somebody's listening and they want to give it to you. So yeah, we're they are always very eager to partner. I'm not the least bit surprised that they would see something and be like, oh, here, let me get that for you.
Yeah, they made it so easy. That was fantastic. Now, if people want to check out some of the images and things, website, and does NASA have Instagram and Facebook?
We do. We almost broke the internet with our Instagram and the James Webb.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, it was incredible. So NASA on Instagram, right? You can follow us there. You can also follow NASA Armstrong. Each center has their own Instagram account too. So depending on what you're interested in, you can follow the centers. I highly recommend NASA Armstrong. We did a flyover today that we did a little live event for. So you can go see a 3-ship, which is 3 aircraft. I think we had 3 F-18s. No, 2 F-18s and an F-15. I'm trying to remember what it was that flew over the building. And so we try to share those things. But if you're interested in images, all of NASA's images that we release are free for the public. And so quick plug, if you see a NASA image and somebody is charging for it, go to the NASA source and get it for free because you don't have to pay for it. Now, sometimes people do really cool things and lay all sorts of cool colors on them, and more power to them. But if you go to images.nasa.gov, every image that we've ever released to the public is out there and you can search it. It might take a minute because it's a gigantic database, but you can download it and it's original file size. It comes with all of the metadata, the dates, all of who's in it, all of that. So I always tell people, like, if you're doing something for your kids' room and you need space photos, that's the place to go. If you need cool history photos about what's happened out there, go out there.
That's cool.
I would highly recommend a NASA flyover at Tehachapi City Hall.
You can request them.
But he always wants it below the flight deck. I'm just letting you know right now. He's going to request that it actually be below the flight deck.
I want to see the rivets.
That's right.
It's loud. I'll warn you, it's loud.
Now we're used to that.
Yeah.
All right. Megan, anything else that you want to share with us? We've asked you, peppered you with all kinds of questions from all different angles, and you fielded them all. Is there anything that you wanted to get out that we haven't talked about?
Not in particular. You know, we encourage people to come learn about us. We're on the web, so nasa.gov. Come check it out. Take our images, use them for your purposes. Use our information. If you have questions, there is always a contact at the bottom of every article we put out there, and we are always willing to answer questions. So don't hesitate. Our information's out there. Come and get us.
So I think when your 1,400 employees listen to this podcast, we want to hear from them as to some topics that maybe we can cover next time you visit.
Absolutely.
How's that sound?
Yep. So all of our folks that listen to Tehachapi will have them.
There are
quite a few.
There are a lot.
Yeah, but usually they probably listen to the show to disconnect from work, and they're thinking, "Great, I got to listen to the stuff at work on the way to work."
Well, I find that when I'm out on the pickleball court, is that there are a lot of people in aviation, aeronautics that live here and they play pickleball. But they listen and they get fascinated and they throw me topics while we're out there on the courts. Hey, and I've actually pulled a couple of interviews by talking to people. Hey, well, I do this and that. And so
maybe NASA will like create the next more aerodynamic pickleball paddle.
Yeah, I'm sure the technology that's being used in some of these
composites and stuff are out there.
Yeah, that's exactly
I'm
right.
sure
that they were originated.
Some kind of composite on at least one of the rovers or the helicopter that could definitely help. Right now, all of our engineers and our center director who lives in Tehachapi, who will listen to this, is like, what did she just sign us up for?
He's actually my neighbor. I was going to say his name, but I'm like, I don't want to.
So a new project. Forget all that space travel or the flight test stuff. We need some pickleball paddles that are more aerodynamic.
I'm telling you, I see NASA as a partner. When we have a pickleball tournament of some kind, we'll have NASA on board. And
hey, we have a fabrication shop that would blow your mind.
All right.
They can build anything, and they do. They build like 75% of our parts for all of our aircraft. They build them in-house. So
cool.
Pretty cool.
If you need something built, they're the guys to do it.
All right. I've enjoyed the conversation. Yeah. You guys went to town. I sat back and I got to listen and I got to enjoy as Megan's getting peppered from 3 different directions.
And it's like you love the shuttle program.
But I always play a role of sometimes I'll lead conversations. Sometimes I sit back. I have to sit back because this is you love this, Greg. This is you absolutely love aviation, aeronautics, and the region. And I think that's where we've expanded our conversation here on Tehachapi. was hyper local. And then we started to go, no, we're more than just right here in the city. We are, the region impacts us. And what happens in Mojave,
Absolutely.
at Edwards, these are all part, as Greg says, part of the community. So thank you for, fitting this into your schedule. We've been
You
working on
bet.
this for several weeks, trying to get the schedules narrowed down.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm happy to have you here in studio and not via Zoom.
Yes, I am glad to be in the flesh. The fewer Zoom meetings in life, I'm much happier with those. And again, we're just thrilled to be a part of your community, and we see what you're doing, and our, all of your folks that are in your neighborhoods are coming out and working for us. So thanks for taking care of them when they're not at work with us and giving them good places to go and good quality of life. So we appreciate the partnership.
Outstanding. Megan Pearson, the news chief for NASA Armstrong. Thank you again. Appreciate all the time.
Anytime. Thank you guys for having me.
All right, folks, if there's something about today's show that we've talked about that's drawn a question and you would like us to get it to Megan, send it to us at media@TehachapiCityHall.com. We'll get it to Megan. Or if there's a new thought, suggestion, send it to us. Those engineers out at NASA that are listening, you've got a thought for a show, send it to us and we'll work on it.
Or just stop Megan in the hallway.
That's
at
right.
work when you see her.
Yes.
They're actually, what they're probably doing is taking notes to correct me on all the ways I explained their stuff.
You're going to have a stack this large,
Yeah.
I'm sure. Well,
Which I would
technically you're right,
welcome.
but
There you go. All right, folks, we appreciate the time that you spend with us here at Tehachapi, and we'll catch you again soon.
Tehachapi is a conversation about Tehachapi, featuring the community members who make this such a special place to call home. If you have a question or a thought you'd like to share, email media@TehachapiCityHall.com. Thank you to Gary Mazzola for sharing his song, This is Tehachapi.